Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the second live session of our course on poetry. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. As we promised in the last live session, we will have some time, substantial time for discussion on the question paper that we will have at the end of this course in our end semester examination. I have prepared actually a small miniature question paper for you. I will share it with you through the screen. To begin with, we can recall the kind of courses, the topics that we have covered so far. You can see here the topics that we have in this course, 12 weeks and 12 topics. Now we are in the 7th week. The first topic is Introduction and Chaucer. Second one is Elizabethan poetry. Third one, metaphysical poetry. The fourth topic is neoclassical and pre-romantic poetry. The fifth topic is romantic poetry. The topic for 6th week is Victorian poetry, and the 7th week's topic is modern poetry. And in the subsequent weeks, we will have topics like American poetry, feminist poetry, contemporary British poetry, Indian poetry, and we have a panel discussion. We have a discussion with 2 college teachers who are teaching poetry. We also have a discussion with a poet who is writing in English from Chennai. And lastly, we will have a conclusion. These are the topics. I am sure you have enjoyed listening to the enjoyed listening to the lecture so far, and I am happy that many of you had some questions, and these questions have been answered through the discussion forum. In the last live session also, we answered quite a few questions for you. For this live session, we had a few questions from some of the learners. This question was raised in the discussion forum as well. Please throw some light on nonsense poetry. Nonsense poetry is a form of poetry which is well known, and we have a few writers like Lewis Carroll and Edward Lear. I thought of showing you some examples from Lewis Carroll here. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Bat is the title of this poem. As you read this poem, you will find some sense may be there, but normally as we read a poem by Wordsworth or by Shakespeare or by T.S. Eliot, we may not have it. So let's just read it. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you are at. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you are at. And you know very well, this is a kind of imitation of the famous nursery rhyme. Many of the nonsense poems are meant for children who will love the sound. Nonsense poetry conveys meaning more through sound than words. Here we have another example, Jabberwocky. This is a real nonsense poetry. It was brillig and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave. If you look at this, you will not be able to understand anything. This is real nonsense poetry. And we have, you can look at this example like this in other cases as well. It's a long poem. Here we have another one, the Walrus and the Carpenter. This may make some sense, but the previous one, Jabberwocky, may not really make much sense at all. Let's look at this. The Walrus and the Carpenter. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright, and this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It is very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. So there is a kind of narrative in this poem, The Walrus and the Carpenter. As you can see, there is a kind of interaction between the sun and the moon. It is the point of view of the moon that we have here. So something which is not normal, something which is strange, that is presented to us. The next question we had was relating to rhyme, rhythm and meter. How do we understand the rhythm in a poem? Sorry. We have one small example. Rhyme, all of you can see. Traditional verses will have rhyme. Modern unconventional poems may not have rhyme like this. So the words at the end in red letter rhyme with each other like gold and hold, flower and hour, leaf and grief, day and stay. This is easy for everyone to identify. How do we identify the rhythm in a poem? So that's a question that we had in the list of questions. If you want to understand the rhythm of a poem, we need to first count the number of syllables in each line. So here you can see, you can take any line, and I have taken the first line for example. First two lines I have taken for example here. Nature's first green is gold. Nature is one word, though we have apostrophe, it's not considered a syllable. First, green, two syllables. First is one word, green is another. Then is gold. They are all separate words. Only in the case of nature we have two syllables, so they come together. And so in general in English poetry we have this iambic pattern. In our common speech pattern we have this iambic rhythm. That's why this iambic is common to most poetry. So the first word, nature, has a stress on the first letter itself, that is N, nature. So here we have this nature, stress on the first syllable we have, trochee. We have one slanting line and then a cross mark where we have the stress, that is the slanting line, and the cross mark, we don't have the stress there. So nature, then both first and green are stressed, that's why we have spondy. So this stressed, unstressed, this is what we have to learn if we want to identify the rhythm. First we have to know the syllables, next we have to know whether a word is stressed or not, or which part of the word is stressed and which part of the word is not stressed. For example, in the case of nature, first letter, that is N, there we have the stress, and the second one, nature, the second one is not stressed usually. For the sake of stressing we can do it, but normally it is not stressed. Second part of nature is not stressed. So we have like this, we have to identify, this is where, that's why in the whole of our course we have tried to show how certain words are stressed, how certain parts of the words are stressed, and we have used this as a specific way of approaching a poem. Remember, thematic contrast is one section we have. Next, poetic devices. Third, rhyme, rhythm and meter, and lastly we have overall impression. So these four sections we have for every poem, so that you can really understand the nature of the poem, the meaning of the poem, the poetic devices used in the poem, the rhythm or the music of poetry. And the second line we have in this poem, nothing gold can stay, is this, that is, her hardest hue to hold. We have mentioned trimeter, we'll come to that in a moment. First, let's see the second line. Her, hard, if it is a just one word, hard, then we have only one syllable. But when we have hardest in its superlative form, we have two syllables. Then hue is one word, to is another word, hold is one more word. So her hardest hue to hold, we have six syllables again. Number of words we have five, and this particular word hardest is disyllabic, monosyllabic, disyllabic, trisyllabic. This is how we identify the number of syllables and give names to them. Her, sorry, her is not normally stressed, but hard is stressed. So the first part of hard is stressed, that's why we call it I am. Similarly, in the case of hardest hue, their hue is stressed, unstressed, stressed, that is I am. So the second is also I am. The third one, to hold, to is not normally stressed, hold is stressed, so that is also I am. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 I ams we have, one trachea we have, another spondy we have. That this is how we identify the number of iambic rhythms or different kinds of rhythm, and then call it iambic. And then look at this trimeter. Why do we call it trimeter? Dimeter, trimeter, tetrameter, pentameter, hexameter. Like this we have, depending on the number of syllables and the way in which they combine to make a foot. Foot of 1 foot or 2 feet, 3 feet. When if we have 3 feet, that is a trimeter. If we have just 2, then that is dimeter. Hope it is useful to you. Tetrameter means 4 feet. Penta means 5 feet. So meter is related to foot, and rhythm is related to this stress and unstressed syllable. So this is how we have to understand and call it something iambic pentameter or iambic trimeter. Hope this is very useful to you. We can now move on to the next most important topic for us. In between we have yeah, I think, yeah, that's the most important topic for us. I think we should spend considerable time. We should spend considerable time for this sample paper. We will do that now. If you have any questions or comments, if you have any questions on this, please ask me so that I can give you answers. Yeah, I don't see any questions. That means I think we can go ahead with the next most important topic, that is sample question paper. Yes, this is how you will have your question paper. We totally have some 7 sections. Say whether the following statements are true or false. Whatever questions we have in this paper will be based on whatever we have covered in our course, nothing else. Some of these you may have already come across in your assignments, like say whether the following statements are true or false. We will have 10 questions on this, and then you have to select true or false. Here we have a question. Chaucer was the first poet to use heroic couplet in English. Say whether this is true or false. Some of you who if you can answer this, that will be wonderful. It was Chaucer who tried to use heroic couplet first. From him only we have later in Dryden and Pope, we have this in the best format. So this is, you will have to select true. The second one, Edmund Spenser wrote the sonnet sequence Arcadia. Is it true or false? So it will be very nice if you can interact, but unfortunately we are not able to do that. Anyway, Arcadia was written by Philip Sidney, not by Spencer. So this is false. So true, false. If you choose like this for 10 questions, one section you will complete. Many other questions will be based on whatever you have studied in the course, in the lectures that we have covered. Let me hope sincerely that all of you are watching these videos, and it appears to me that many of you are watching, and that's why you are raising questions in the discussion forum. Shall we move to the next section? Do you want to have any is there any? Yes. So yes, we will come to that. We will cover one section after another. The last one would be, I see that it would be immensely helpful if you could talk about answer writing. Yes, that is the last section. I want you to become familiar with the question paper. That's why I have done like this. We will look at everything one after another. Now, first section is over. Are you able to see the second section now? In the second section, we have this instruction, choose a single most appropriate answer from the following. 20 questions you will have here. Each one will carry 1 mark. Like the first one, 1 mark, 10 questions, 10 marks. What is the poetic device you notice in the following lines of Carroll and Duffy's poem Valentine? So poetic devices, we have had one lecture, in that we have discussed, and such a device we discuss wherever you find in the poems that we have covered. So the lines are given for you. I tend the mobile now like an injured bird. Uh, Many of you can guess the poetic device used in this is simile, not metonymy, not metaphor, not oxymoron, not personification. So you can understand that this is the answer for this. Similarly, for each section, I have 2 questions like this to give you a sample. Then the next question here is, what does the allusion in the following line from Chaucer's The Prologue to the Canterbury Tales refer to? The line from Chaucer's prologue is this, for he was Epicurus' very son. This Epicurus lived a very jolly life, and that's why we have 4 answers. From this you can immediately understand that this Epicurus lived a very happy, pleasurable life, and that's why we have this sensualist here. This is the answer for this. If you are able to choose like this, we have given some distractors like disciplinarian, that is the opposite of it. Then aristocrat, that refers to class. It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with discipline or aristocracy. But you will find bohemian. It may look like somewhat similar to Epicurus, but the real answer is sensualist. That's how you have to choose the correct answer. Then we have section 3. Here again we have a question like this. Choose the 2 most appropriate answers from the following. In some cases, you have to choose. Oh, this I think I have not corrected it here. I'm sorry about it. When I send it to you, I will give you the correct one. 4 options I have corrected. The 5th one, this has nothing to do with him, has nothing to do with sonnet. So we should not choose that. We can Here we have actually two appropriate answers in one section, like this section 3. In the case of the previous one, if you choose one answer, that's fine. But in this case, again here I think one mark must be there, that we have to look into. Here we have just 10 multiplied by 1, 10. So that is the kind of, let me correct it here itself. Yeah, so you have to choose two answers, but you will have only one mark. Yeah, here in this case, hymn, you know, it's a song in praise of something. Here we have mentioned God, and song certainly not sorrow, not certainly human weakness, not certainly about nature. It may be about nature, but not necessarily. So there is something to do with praise. That's why this hymn is there. This one I have to modify it. I will, when I send it to you, I will modify it. Probably I am not sure whether I have done it here also. Identify two poetic devices. There is no problem with this. Here we have it correct. Michael Drayton's idea 61. I have given you 4 lines and asked you to identify two poetic devices which are found in this particular section. Since there is no help, come, let's kiss and part. Nay, I have done, you get no more of me, and I am glad, you glad with all my heart, that thus so cleanly I myself can free. So you can see some kind of alliteration and assonance in this. Can you see this cleanly and free? This is the case of assonance, and glad it is repeated again and again, that you can see that is alliteration. So if you are able to identify like this, that is good for you. We may also look at this irony here. This, if you clearly look at it with a little more attention, that's how this alliteration, glad and glad, we have only one sound. But when you look at the first line very carefully, you will see, since there is no help, come let's kiss and part. I have, nay, I have done, you get no more of me. And this glad and this come let's and kiss and part, and that's where you can see the answers, two answers for this will be more related to irony and assonance. I did not deliberately highlight this answer here for you, how you will go through this choice. When you are making the choice, it may look like alliteration, but in this case, you can see irony and assonance, they are much more suitable for this purpose. Now, here in this case, section 4, we have fill in the blanks with the exact numerical values. Just two samples I have here for you. The glorious revelation occurred in one particular year. I have mentioned here, you have to just give the numbers. And similarly, for an epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot was published in 1735. One section only for numerical values. From different lectures, you will have them. So that means when you are listening to the lectures, you have to listen carefully to the numbers wherever they are used. Then section 5, certain words have to stay with you in your mind. So some quotations we give, and then we remove one word. You have to give the one word, the missing word there. For example, in the first one, and are gone to praise God and his priest and king who make up a heaven of our misery. Some amount of familiarity with the poem is required. This, a heaven of our misery. This is a poem from William Blake, you may recall, and the children are left to fend for themselves. Parents, priests, God, they are worried about God, they are not thinking about children and their misery. And in the second case, oh, there is blessing in this gentle breeze. It's not that we will have every poem from every line from every poem. Some important poems which are striking. As you read the poems, please do pay attention to the lines and try to remember the words and the sounds so that you can really get some feeling of this poetry. This is the first line of the prelude. Oh, there is blessing in this gentle breeze. So how can we forget this blessing from the gentle breeze that Wordsworth is getting in his rural environment? Next, we have one section where we have matching some items from column A with some items in column B. So we have just given two examples, Dryden and Coleridge in column A, Willing Suspension of Disbelief, Absalom and Achitophel. That's the title of a book by Dryden, and this Coleridge is associated with the willing suspension of disbelief. This is a concept from Coleridge. So something or the other, like Coleridge, we may have primary imagination, secondary imagination, fancy, like this. Some other term may be there in some way or other. The terms given or the names given, the ideas given in column A will be connected with column B. That we have to match and give the answers. At the end of this, you will have in the computer screen when you are taking that exam, it will show you options, so it's easy for you to choose. Here I have not been able to do it. This is just one Word document that I have prepared. Yes, now we come to section 7, and in this section we call it comprehension section, where we give you a short poem which you are not familiar with. In the case of the next section, section 8, where we have to write about the poem, we have some poems or extracts from poems from the course that we have studied, that is familiar to you, that is not strange. But in this section, section 7, we will have some poem from and it's, you can call it unseen poem. Some of you may have read such poems, but for our purpose, this will be called the unseen passage. So here we have a small poem. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had ruled. So we have some 3 questions here. Some more questions we may have, normally 10 questions as you can see. Which word rhymes with the word mood in the poem? So here we have mood, and then we have to identify the word which is rhyming with this word. So you can easily identify, and it depends. The questions may vary from poem to poem. Just some examples that we have in this section are here. What could be a suitable title for the poem? This poem, the title of this poem is actually Dust of Snow. You have to spend some time to think about, understand what is this poem about, and then you may find some words which are within the poem. In some cases you may not find the titles within the poem. Whatever you think, this is just one more question. It requires some amount of effort from you to think about the poem deeply and then give the title of the poem. What could be a suitable title for the poem? In this case, I have, at least in this first year, I have not given alternative titles. Maybe in future I could think of some alternative title, so that some other title that you think may be considered equal. So, Dust of Snow is a title for this poem. How many sentences does the poem have? If you look at it, this may look an ordinary question, but we have lines. Normally when we look at a poem, we look at the lines. In terms of grammar or grammatical sentence, we don't look at it. But a serious reading of a poem will demand us to look into the sentence structure of the poem. When you look into the sentence structure of the poem, you can see we have 8 lines, 2 stanzas, but then we have full stop at the end. and we have just only one sentence in this poem. So for this you have to write just one. If you write that, then you have the correct answer. So the way a crow, you can see, has given, that is the main verb here, but in between you also have many other like this. The way a crow shook down on me. Here is another verb, but the main verb for this sentence is here, has given my heart a change of mood. And again you have another verb, saved some part of a day I had ruled. Some ordinary event, a crow sits on a bough or a branch of a plant, and then it shakes the snow. This snow is considered to be dust of snow, and then the tree is something very serious. That is where what kind of can you identify any symbol in this poem? If you are asked to do, yeah, if you are asked a question like that, yes, hemlock tree can be a symbol of death. The crow, black color, is also associated with death. So the symbol of death is there, and again dust is again connected with death. So this ordinary event of a crow shaking down some snow on the speaker has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had ruled. Ruled, thought about seriously. So some kind of change happens because of this event. Some external event brings about a change in the mind and the heart of the poet or the speaker of this poem. So we have to, when we pay attention to sentence or words like this combining to give some meaning, we are moving on to the next section, where the question from you, many of you, how to write an answer on a poem. And our questions will be all related to um, our questions on writing about a poem will come under this section 8. Section up to section 7, that's why I mentioned earlier 7 sections. All of them will have only 1 mark each. But when we come to this last section, section 8, we will have some marking difference. That is, each section will have 5 marks. One question, 5 marks. What is the common instruction for all of you? For all the questions after 81, enter a critical appreciation of the given poems using the method of thematic contrast, poetic devices, rhyme, rhythm and meter, and finally overall impression. Through this course, the main attempt is to train you in reading a poem thematically, technically, musically, and then emotively or emotionally. I hope you get the point. Thematic, technical, musical, and emotional response to a poem. How do you do it? For this section, we have some full, if for example, if there is a sonnet, that will be a whole poem. But if it is a longer poem like Wordsworth's The Prelude, we can't give you the long poem for analysis here. So we will have some 10 lines, 12 lines, 15 lines, maximum 20 lines, not more than that. You have to read on a computer screen the whole poem and then give answers. You have to type your answer, so it will be difficult. So we have some word limit of 200 words as well. One question, actually 4 questions will be there. Here we have question number 81, and this will carry 5 marks, and there will be an extract like this. So in this case, what I want you to do is to write an answer like this. You can see the poem first on a screen, and then you have to write. So a brief introduction you can give. Thematic contrast, you can have a title. Then poetic devices, another title, subheading. Then rhyme, rhythm, meter, one more subheading. Overall impression, one more, and lastly you can have a conclusion. All this you have to do in 200 words. So some introduction you can have 1 sentence, conclusion you can have another sentence, in between you can have 2-3 sentences for each of them. So when you read a poem like this is not a complete poem. Kubla Khan has something like 44 lines. Here we have only some 10 or 12 lines like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines we have. So out of these 11 lines, you have to write your own impression based on these, primarily on these three categories. You may know the name of the poet, you may know the name of the poem or title of the poem. If you have listened to the lectures carefully, you would know this is a poem called Kubla Khan and this is written by Coleridge. So you can recall certain things like this is a poem that Coleridge wrote from his dream, and he was fascinated by Kubla Khan, the Chinese emperor who built a stately pleasure dome. And there was a river called Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, ran through some deeper underground, and it went on to reach this and look at that sunless sea, that is dark region. So twice 5 miles, 10 miles fertile ground, that river runs through 10, I mean a fertile ground for 10 miles, and there we have walls, towers, all are protected, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills. These sinuous rills all bending and moving through different parts of the fertile ground or garden, where blossomed many an incense bearing tree. You have this incense, some kind of smell. This, you know, our what we use at home, incense for our puja and things like that. And here were forests, ancient as the hills, garden, forest, ancient hills enfolding sunny spots of greenery. This whole place is full of green, and there we have sunlight. That's why it's bright, and that place is called Xanadu, and the emperor of this place is Kubla Khan. What he has done is to construct a pleasure dome just for his pleasure, decree and order. It's a royal, stately, royal, kingly dome that he has built. Now, when it comes to thematic contrast, Kubla Khan is an emperor. He can be contrasted with an ordinary man. This stately king or kingly can be contrasted with poor, normal, ordinary, and the sacred river can be contrasted with profane river. What we have in our cities and towns today, they are all dirty rivers. So you can caverns measureless to man, measureless, but that which cannot be measured, immeasurable, sunless sea, sunful sea, bright sea, and dark sea. Like this, you can fertile, sterile ground, long and short root, well protected and poorly maintained gardens, and with full of good smell, incense bearing tree, and there without any kind of smell at all, dull trees you can say, and ancient, modern, and hills and valleys, sunny, dark, greenery, wasteland. You can connect, you can create a pair of binaries like this from the given poem. You have, when if you can do it, that will be wonderful. Similarly, you can identify the poetic devices in the poem, mostly to do with this metaphor, simile, assonance, alliteration, sunless sea, for example, sunless sea, alliteration. You can immediately identify twice, 5 miles, fertile, assonance you can easily get, and these walls and towers are symbols of human effort or endeavor. This pleasure dome itself is a symbol of human achievement, and the sacred river in this poem is considered to be the symbol of imagination. So symbol, metaphor, personification, you can as much as possible. I am just giving a small passage, all of them may not be there. Doom, decree, that is the case of alliteration, river, ran, alliteration, measureless, man, alliteration. When you have more such alliterations, you can try to see some kind of connection. Though bearing and bright come in two different lines, you can connect them with bearing, bright, blossomed. So those words which begin with this sound blossom, bright, bearing, what kind of meaning do they try to convey to the audience? At least in terms of sound, there is a kind of pleasant feeling of sound that you can get from these poetic devices. And when it comes to rhyme, rhythm, and meter, you can see rills and hills, they rhyme with each other, and ground, round, they rhyme with each other, ran, man, they rhyme with each other, decree and see, they match. And similarly you can con and ran, you can man, you can try to partial rhyme, you can see. It is possible for you. uh, and please remember, whatever lectures, videos we have posted, please listen to them, and it may be possible for you to remember certain things from the lectures you have studied, but then you should have been able to acquire the capacity for analyzing the poem without using your memory. That's where conceptual understanding is important. For example, for this thematic contrast, for ancient, modern should come to you automatically. For fertile, sterile should come to you automatically. Sunny spots, dark spots. This is the kind of thought process that you have to develop on your own to understand how you are going to approach the poem. On the whole, to give this meter, you have to count the number of syllables in Xanadu, in, za, na, do, did, ku, la, khan. 7 syllables are there in Xanadu. It will come together, did, Kubla Khan. When you read it, you can, tonal groups you can have. So 7, if you analyze, yeah, stately, and that's where it may not be exactly I am, pleasure, doom, decree, yeah, stately, pleasure, there are 2 syllables, stately, there are 2 syllables, doom, 1 syllable, decree, 2 syllables. So yeah, something like a stately may come together, pleasure will may come separately, or doom may come secret. Doom alone cannot come separately here. You have to where of, that is easy to identify, where of, their sacred, river, 2 syllables are there, ran comes separately. It's not that easy for us. When we have some complex poem like this, down to is easy to identify, a sunless sea. This down to a sunless sea, wherever is possible for you. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground, with walls and towers were girdled around, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills. So it's a matter of training yourself. Unless you train yourself to identify words like this, and here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. Unless you train yourself, it's not that easy. So, however, you can do some kind of management of this meter with down to a sunless sea, down to 2 syllable, down to a sunless sea. So you have 6 syllables. So trimeter, so twice 5 miles of fertile ground, tetrameter. In this case, in the case of this poem, we have mentioned this as polymetrical. So it may be single meter like trimeter, or just to 2 meters like trimeter and tetrameter, and in some cases you may have many meters. If you look at this line, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, you may find more, and there were gardens bright with sinuous rills. 10 syllables you have. So you have a pentameter line you have here. So you can say this is polymetrical. I am trying to draw your attention to how you identify the rhyme, rhythm, and meter. In the case of here, you again you can have multiple forms of rhythm down to a sunless sea, um, down both down and to they may not be stressed, but in this case down as it comes first we may give stress on down to a sunless sea is stressed, so here you may less and sea you may have I am, yes sun, there you may have I am, down to you may have trochee, so trochee I am like this you may find it, and one has to be a little more careful, so twice there I am 5 miles spondy off a tile, that is I am tile ground again I am. Please do pay attention to these words I am, spondy, trochee, and then anapes, dactyl, which we have mentioned in the course. In every poem, wherever we find them, we have mentioned them. Please do pay attention. Remember, just one or two examples for each, you can easily manage. Wherever we have two words like 5 miles, they are single syllabled words. So some understanding of the words, sentence structures, that is a basic necessity or basic criterion for us to approach a poem. How do you give an overall impression now? This poem deals with the emperor, Chinese emperor Kubla Khan, who built you can give something like a small paraphrase of this, and then what was he attempting to do? Something that he was uh, attempting to achieve which is not normally done by others. Every human being, somebody who wants to go beyond the normal life will try to achieve immortality. When Coleridge wrote a poem like this, he was trying to achieve some kind of immortal name for himself as a poet. The same way, the character that the poet deals with also attempts achieve some kind of immortality by building a pleasure dome. And you know many architectural buildings in the world, for example, Eiffel Tower, we may not exactly recall who built it, but that is a symbol of the human effort to stay forever in this world, though we know very well everything is subject to time. Things everything that is human decays, everything that is produced by humans decays, that is degenerates, destroys, but it is a human effort to fight with time and stay. And in the case of words, they, as long as we are alive, as long as the human race is there, as long as we know how to read letters, we will keep on reading and interpreting poems like this. So you can try to give your own impression of what you understand from this poem through this overall impression. It's about Kubla Khan. It deals with the idea of imagination in this poem to explore the imaginative possibility of building something in poetry by Coleridge, in architecture by Kubla Khan. For us, even this effort to understand the poem is a monumental effort. Every one of you would feel it. The moment you put in your heart and soul into do something like this, the effort is monumental effort, not just an ordinary effort. So you can give one conclusion for this and write your answer. This is how you should be able to do it. Maybe in the next live session we will have a I will give you the written down answer, perhaps that is possible. We can try to give you a sample answer. That's what actually one learner wanted, but in this live session I thought you must have an idea of what kind of question paper that you are going to have. Primarily we have 7 sections dealing with one mark questions, and then the last section, 8th section, is about your own writing. This is subjective, you have to write, and all that we have done in the courses will be covered here. Nothing extra will be given. Whatever passages we have used, that's what, at least in the beginning I thought I must not use something away from the passages that we have used. I hope this discussion has been of some help to you. Now let's come back Let me see if you have some questions or comments. Oh, you have, yes. Oh, the poetry book that we mentioned the last class is Norton Anthology of Poetry. That will be useful to you. And then for this kind of analysis, I mentioned another book, How to Study a Poet, by one critic called John Peck. Yes, you have identified some. Yes, uh, you have a question related to. Unfortunately, I missed my 1 to 5 assignment. That I don't know how you are. I will ask our NPTEL team to answer your question. How you can manage with this. Uh, it's not easy for you to write about Coleridge or any poet. If you know about the poet, you can just write one line. It's as much as possible you can try to give a complete picture. If you don't know about Coleridge, then what will you do? Doesn't matter. Write what you understand about the poet. You can manage yourself. Uh, uh, yeah, you have any other questions, comments? I wanted you to understand this live, I mean the question paper in this live session. Thank you for those questions, and some small correction I had done, that I will make the correction and upload it. One question I had mentioned two answers, that's relating to him. I will correct it and upload it for you in our discussion forum. Thank you very much. Any questions, any more questions, comments? The 12 topics for, I hope you are all watching the live sessions. I hope you are, oh, the names of those books. Norton Anthology of, shall I type it out here? I think that is better for you. Let me try. I will try now. One is Norton Anthology of Poetry. This is one book. Another book is uh, yes, How to Study a Poet by John Peck. Actually, in our normal classes or in our studies, some kind of effort we make, but then how to appreciate poetry really, that we don't get. That's why I have been taking so much of effort to help you as much as possible. This a poem is about a poet and about his or her feeling, and this is conveyed to us through language. So when we read the language used by the poet, how do we appreciate it? How do we really understand through language? How do we understand the emotion of a poet through the language used by the poet? And the language is used by us as well. And the poem on Dust of Snow would have given you some idea of connecting so many words to focus on some theme or some symbol. Remember, theme will be connected with symbol as well. In the case of Coleridge's poem on Kubla Khan, you can see the theme of the poem is not just Kubla Khan or his pleasure doom, it's also imagination. Symbolically, it's not just imagination, it's any imaginative endeavor. So please send your questions to discussion forum or to this live session. One more session we will plan. If you want to have any special plan for our live session, we can have one more in between. Fourth one also we can have. We'll try. In the next class, as I promised you last time, I have given you an idea of what kind of question paper you will have. In the next um, live session, I will give you a sample of how exactly you can write about a poem within 200 words. That 200 word sample I will try to give you in the next live session. Thank you very much. Shall we take leave now? Thank you all.